Hello and a very warm welcome back to Morsels and Motors. In today's episode I am joined by this wonderful 1989 Peugeot 309 5-door hatchback. Now the 309 has a really interesting history because it was originally intended to be a Talbot and it was going to be called the Talbot Arizona. But as you know, the Talbot brand was discontinued by Peugeot and they were left with this kind of project car that was part way through development. And so instead of abandoning it, they decided to carry on with it and launch it as a Peugeot. And that explains the slightly odd numbering which didn't quite fit in with the rest of Peugeot's numbering at the time. And that also goes part of the way to explaining the styling of the car. The door section comes from the 205 in order to save money, but the rest of the car is a Talbot design kind of made to look a bit more like a Peugeot. For me, where the styling kind of falls down compared to the 205 is the front. It shares a familiar resemblance of the 205, but it's just the front end is just that little bit taller on the 309. It makes it more boxy and consequently more kind of dumpy looking than the 205's front end. I'm sure there's a reason for that, probably to get the engines in, I'm not sure. But the wing line is kind of higher, and then consequently the indicators and the headlights are just that little bit more kind of vertical and upright than the 205, and it just changes the face so slightly, but enough for me to not give it quite that kind of elegance that the 205 has. Okay, let's have a look inside this Peugeot 309. We have pretty much the same door handle as the 205, but obviously this is a 5-door version. Opens nice and wide to reveal a fully trimmed door panel. This has got a kind of a very conservative bit of vinyl along the edges, and then this kind of grey checkered fabric there. There's your door handle, speaker, grille, manual windows there, and a very, very tiny little door pocket that is a little bit pointless, I have to say. Wouldn't be able to get an awful lot in there, maybe a map or something like that, I suppose, back in the day. Incidentally, I've always loved these door pulls that the 205s and 309s had, just with the ridges on them. There's just something kind of, there's about Peugeot and ridges in the 1980s. They're everywhere, aren't they? Let's open the back door because we can, and we open that 205 door again, which always makes me laugh, I think, to reveal a very similar kind of door to the one on the front. The angle I quite like is mirrored, so you see how the angle there is mirrored on the front door over there. I think that's quite neat, actually. Nice little touch. Pointless, but a lovely touch nevertheless. And we have an ashtray in the door in the rear, very similar to the 205, and there's one on the other side as well. The rear seats are split fold in the middle, just like the 205. This cloth is very similar to the one on the door cards. You can see it's kind of checked. It might be dark blue, actually. Yes, I think it's dark navy and white, kind of a very pale check. It looks like it has faded because this seat belt would have been there covering it up, so it would have been a little bit darker to the eye when it was new, whereas it's faded a little bit and the white is a bit more prevalent as opposed to the navy. Headlining is kind of a standard kind of pale grey, and we've got some speakers, I think, in the C-pillars over there as well, which gives you a little bit of luxury. Let's get into the back, which is very easy on a 309 because you do get rear doors. Although there were 3-door 309s, of course, they came later. But let's step in, and it's a decent place to be. I've got adequate, I would say, legroom. Lots and lots of headroom, really not bad at all. No headrests, of course. Quite a comfortable, squishy seat. Again, I would not want to sit in the middle there on the split. It's a bit weird, although there is, I think, a centre lap belt hiding there. I do like these little seat belt buckle holders, which are there, although the one on this side is sadly missing, which is a bit of a shame, but it's a nice touch. Behind me we do have a parcel shelf. It's quite large, and I'll show you it properly because it actually splits in a slightly interesting way, so I'll show you when I open the boot in just a second. This particular car has, I would say it's an aftermarket sunroof. It doesn't look like a Peugeot sunroof of the 80s, which, like the 205, would be usually mounted on top, but it's just a nice little pop-up. It's nice to have, get a bit of ventilation. The backs of these seats have this quite nice little kind of piped vinyl bit in them. I think it's a bit pointless, but at least it makes it feel less stark than if it was just plain. There isn't a mat pocket or anything in it, so we're still in a fairly kind of lowly model here. This is a GL, which I'm not entirely sure what it is, but we'll have a look at the brochure in a second, see if we can find out. I have to admit, these rear doors feel really flimsy and tinny when you close them and open them. It feels really lightweight. I mean, it's an 80s car and it's a Peugeot, so, you know, I can't complain too much. Well, having a look at the brochure, we find out this is a Peugeot 309 GL special equipment. So this is a special equipment brochure. So the XE is kind of the more base one, which does get some additional stuff, but this is a GL. So we get, on top of the standard GL spec, we get metallic paint, pop-up glass sunroof. So that is a standard, actually. That's unusual for a Peugeot to pop up. Central door locking, special equipment decal. That's all you want, isn't it, as a decal? That's I love 1980 special editions and how they love saying the decal, to say that it's that special edition is part of the special edition badging. Brilliant. Yeah, we haven't got a GLX or a GRD, so this is the second model up in the range, the GL, rather than XE and GE. What's the difference in XE and a GE? I don't understand. Peugeot trim levels from the 80s is really confusing. Right, let's have a look at the fascia dashboard of the 309. It's a very different shape to the one on the 205. It's entirely bespoke to the 309, which is strange. You think that as part of their cost-cutting measures they would have the same dash, given that they are effectively the same car in the middle. This is a much more kind of bluff dash. It's kind of angled backwards towards the driver, and actually is echoed later in the 306, which replaced this. So that is where the genesis of it came from, was in this 309. Taking a seat inside, we've got this nice steering wheel. It's a two-spoke affair, which I do rather like. I always like a two-spoke steering wheel. And this is blue. It's sort of a blue vinyl. Hopefully you can see that. It's a little bit squishy, quite comfortable to use, absolutely fine. On the right-hand side, we've got a very funky, I do love this, air vent that matches up to the dash, the cutouts in the dash. I think that's really, really neat and cool, and again goes to this Peugeot theme of kind of ridges that can be found everywhere on the 309 and many other Peugeots of this age as well. We've also got these little dots here, which are the air direction to the window, you know, the driver's window or the passenger window, which I think are actually really sweet. Moving to the instrument cluster, it's again a very totally different instrument cluster to the 205, although I think some 205s do share at least that speedometer. Some warning lights, fuel gauge, speedometer, clock, temperature. The speedometer, interestingly, starts from 0 at sort of the very bottom at sort of 6 o'clock, which is really odd. Yeah, I've not seen something that does that before. Normally they start sort of there, don't they, and go up. Indicator stalks, we've got, this is the wiper controls on the right hand side as standard, and on the left we've got indicators, horn on the end, and how do the lights work? Oh, it's twisty again. Just like the 205, we twist for the lights. That's fun. Does this one twist? No, it doesn't. Just in case. I always like to find out whether things twist. It's very important. We've got the nice Peugeot lion proudly in the middle of the steering wheel there. And this is, again, a different steering wheel, unique to the 309. They don't use this on anything else. Just underneath the steering wheel, we have the choke. And it's one of the oddest looking chokes I've ever seen, because it's actually hinged at the top. So when you pull it out, it sort of pivots there. Like the couch in Friends, it's a pivoty choke, which is, yeah, highly unusual, not seen that. Not the easiest to find, I suspect, when you're kind of scrabbling about for the choke. It's sort of very hidden down there and difficult to reach. Then moving on to the centre console, we have got, again, more ridges. We love our ridges on the 309. We've got more ridged air vents. Then we've got some buttons. We've got a blank. We've got, oh, that must be rear wash wipe. Interesting. Not on the stalk on this. Heated rear window, rear fog light, hazards. Similar to the 205, we've got the kind of infinitely variable fan speed that side, and then just fresh air into the cabin on that side, where the air is to be directed, and the heat. And usually there's no blue on this, it's just purely red for heat, which is, yeah, not something I've seen before on a car. Underneath that we have a massive ashtray, as per usual, with a standard French cigarette lighter, or cigar lighter as I love to say it in the brochures. We have an aftermarket radio stereo there, nice Blaupunkt, nice that. And then we have this is a floaty, it's not an attached centre console, so it's a kind of a floaty dash, so there's a space for nothing there. A cubby in front of the gear stick, and then we have a 5-speed gear stick. It is a different gearbox to the 205. I was kind of wondering whether it was when driving it, and yes, it is, because the reverse is in a totally different place. It's a pull up the collar. There's a little collar here that lifts up, so you have to lift that up to put it over into reverse. The vinyl, everything is blue in this car, which I rather like. That vinyl is blue, not grey. Very bog standard handbrake, and we have a remote operated fuel flap. That's great, love that. At the top here, we've got, again, our pop-up sunroof, which is factory, but I think might be dealer rather than factory, to be honest. Works really well, though. And it's branded Peugeot. Lovely. That's nice. Very sweet. We've got some sun visors that are quite chunky and fit into the kind of moulding in the roof, which kind of, you know, gives a bit of modernity to the car, because that is not something that was done often in the 80s. You remember you had perforated headlining a lot in the 80s. This is probably very modern for 85 when this was launched. The infamous Peugeot kind of toggly interior light there, which sadly doesn't work, but it's cute and adorable. I do like that. Over on the passenger side, we've got a storage cubby there, quite nice and big, more ridged air vents, and oh, that's the side. So these are the holes here for the passenger window, because obviously there isn't a curve on the dash like there is on the driver's side. And then down here we've got a glove box which twists the lock, and oh, that's a nice decent sized glove box, much bigger than the one in the 205. The door mirrors are also internally adjustable with these rather funky kind of remote handles, which are, yeah, they're pretty good. Under the dashboard there's also a little storage cubby here. It's actually quite large, isn't it? Plenty of space for maps and bits and pieces, although it's not lined or anything, so they will rattle around like crazy, I suspect. So let me show you the boot. To get into the boot, we press this button here, pop, and it lifts up from here. I think the facelift 309s, the boot line did drop down to the bumper, but this is a pre-facelift, and we have it kind of quite high up, a bit like a Volvo 340. The parcel shelf is on strings, and it is on gas struts, by the way, but they don't work. So I'm holding it up with my arm. But the parcel shelf goes up on some strings. I think they could do it being a little tauter, to be honest. I don't know whether you can see, but there's like a little internal parcel shelf on the glass here. It hinges down onto the main parcel shelf, as you can see there. It kind of makes it really quite nice and neat. I really like that. I think that's a really neat touch. Very good. And as you can see, the boot is really very spacious indeed. It's much bigger than the one in the 205. We've also got these really funky knobs, which I think you pull. I can't do it because I've got one hand holding up the tailgate in order to tip the rear seats forwards. There's one on the other side as well. I think similarly to the 205, we've got the rear washer bottle there as well. One of the fun facts about the 205 is that these rear light clusters were often used in particular fun fairground rides, which I always thought was an awesome little fact. Let's have a quick look under the bonnet of this 309. I don't quite know how it... Oop, that handle does not look very solid, I have to say, but it does work. Let's just have a quick look under the bonnet, and that is the 1.3 Poissy engine. It's kind of canted a bit back, as is often the case in Peugeot Citroën cars. It's all hidden under the airbox and the air intake stuff, but yeah, it's all there and looks good. Excellent. Okay, so I have just stepped into this 309 immediately after driving the 205 I drove in the previous video. So I thought that I would give you a direct driving impression rather than kind of wait till I got used to it as a comparison to the 205. And it's surprisingly different. The most notable thing is that the steering is way heavier on this compared to the 205. That was super light and direct, and this is much more ponderous in that respect. And the other massive difference is the engine note. So the engine on this is the Poissy overhead valve engine, which does feel very different to the much more silky smooth TU that was in the 205. It somehow feels older than the 205, even though they are the same age. But then that's to do with the tech that's in it, I suppose. Yeah, that steering is way heavier. The engine isn't anywhere near as responsive. It feels quite ponderous in comparison to the really lively, nippy 205. But yeah, you have to work it so much harder to get it to move. Work it. gear change is still very nice, I have to say. I think this has got the updated gearbox. I think the early gearbox on these 309s were known for being pretty unreliable and failing. Brakes are very similar to the 205. They're nice and kind of firm, absolutely fine. Yeah, it's not as, this gear change is, it's nice, but it's not quite as slick as the 205's one. One of the things I've noticed that does make the 309 feel a bit more grown up than the 205 is that it gets separate indicator lights on the dashboard. Hey. So there we have it. That is my look around the Peugeot 309. I really enjoyed having up close to it. I really like some of the design details of the 309. They're quite nice and neat. So things like the all glass boot lid. I like the extra little parcel shelf that attaches to the boot lid. I really like the kind of the stripe motif or the ridges motif that's everywhere inside the car. It's kind of cohesive, nice bit of design, which I really like. But as an all-over package, it's just not quite the car for me. I think the 205 does it better as a super mini, and the 405 is prettier as a bigger car. The 309 is a little bit stuck in the middle. If I was to want a kind of mid-sized Peugeot, I'd want a 306, I think, because that's just got that prettiness of design. It's something that you can look at every angle, looks just right, and that's not something you can quite say about the 309. Well, all that remains for me to say is thank you very much indeed for watching. That is it for this review. Thank you very much to Tay for letting me drive his 309, and yeah, it's a real kind of bucket list car again for me, to be honest. I've never driven one, and it's a real eye-opener to see what it's actually like. So I hope you enjoyed it, and catch you again in the next video. Bye.